What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to Pro v Pro. Very exciting weekend golf, including Justin, the TGL triple header yesterday. I had a lot of fun watching that. What did you think?
I guess I'm going to have to start watching because everybody that I talk to is like, man, this thing's pretty cool. And just watching all the different stuff. I think that the fact that they're willing to keep making their product better and learning from what everybody's saying is pretty cool too. You don't see that a lot anymore.
Yeah, like lots of feedback. So for instance, the change in the way that they use the hammer, I think like that was an immediate improvement, made for a lot more drama. But I think like ultimately it's just about the player buy-in. And as fans, like, what do we want to see? Personally, I want to see these guys compete with each other. I want to see them trash talk. I want to get a glimpse into the thought process on some shots, things like that. And we're getting all of that. And if we didn't have the buy-in, if the players were kind of treating this like the NBA All-Star game, where it's like, we'll hit some, we'll make some swings, we'll hit some putts, but if the putt doesn't go in, I don't care. No, they're fist pumping each other's putts. So I think from that, it's just going to be successful.
Yeah, the buy-in deal for the players is weird to me because everybody's for the last few years have just complained about not wanting to play as much. And Oberg flies across the country after winning and at 3:30 and then plays the part of me is like, is it maybe just the indoor factor? Is it what's the factor that's really, is it just more fun? Are they just having more fun doing it? And the other thing that they've done a good, what's that?
The pace of TGL, I think, is definitely part of it. It's a lot quicker. In fact, I saw like one of the few complaints that I saw was this idea that the new hammer rules make it so that we are missing some opportunities to see a guy like try to make a 20-foot putt, to match an eagle or something like that, because they're just going to decline the hammer instead and not have to miss that 20-footer, and then they lose 2 points. But my counter to that is, okay, but now it just speeds up. Now we just get to the next hole right away, and so the pace gets even better. Like, how many times have we complained about pace of play on the PGA Tour? We're seeing 15 holes in an hour and a half, something like that. So I think the pace is a big part of it. It just makes it really easy for these guys to actually engage in the event.
Yeah, so I mean, we play a ton of hammer games here. I mean, that's a common. Everybody has their own variations, right? Everybody has something they do a little bit different. So it's interesting to see it evolve because I know like all those guys out there have definitely played in some form or fashion, right, with their buddies, and depending on how many shots people are given at home. And, obviously ours is for money and not winning holes. So it's a different, we get a lot of hammer and rehammer stuff, and it's a whole different ballgame. So it is kind of cool to see them bring something else into the game. I think the other thing too is they've kind of accepted the shots that seem to be messed up via the sim, right? So like they'll hit shots and you can tell it does something they don't expect, or like who hit the shot that went like 4 yards or something, and then Tiger hit it like 20 yards over the green. They've kind of been like, all right, this isn't perfect, but it's really, really good.
I think they may have fixed that too, by the way, because I didn't see any of those types of shots yesterday on the triple header. Now, I didn't watch all 3 matches in full. I caught a teeny bit of the first one, a decent bit of the second, and then most of the third. But I didn't see any of those mistakes, and it seemed like the guys were a little bit more confident in what everything was actually showing too. So could be wrong there, but that might be yet another way that they said, all right, here's an issue with the product, and we need to improve it right away, and then they actually did.
Yeah. Just doing the research that I've done, obviously, trying to purchase. So I'm trying to buy a place that literally is just like this. That it has 4 of these bays, same technology. Just the research that I've done, the system's really accurate. There's so many settings that go into these things of so many different things of what you can change. So I think it'll get better. I mean, obviously, think about how far it's come over the last 5 years. I think it'll continue to get better. I think that hitting off the real grass is a huge upgrade to hitting off the mat.
Yeah, definitely agree there. And next point about TGL, by the way, is that we get more of it today, and Tiger's playing. So Do you think that we can take anything from Tiger playing these TGL contests? And I think for me, the most exciting part of it is that every time we've seen Tiger tee it up in an actual tournament over the last few years, what has he talked about? He's talked about the fact that you just can't replicate like tournament reps and being under the gun. And I feel like he's actually getting that here. Like one consistent theme that we've heard from these players is that they're feeling pressure in TGL that they don't feel elsewhere, which isn't because like they care that much more about it. They're not saying that. What they're saying is it's just unique enough. It's unique enough of a challenge that they feel a little bit uncomfortable, and then that little bit of discomfort makes them feel nervous and the type of pressure that maybe you feel when you're like chasing a lead or something like that. So, are you kind of on board with this idea that the TGL could help Tiger?
I definitely think, I don't know about helping Tiger necessarily, just because of how great he's always been and how he's always had the camera on him. That being said, like a lot of these guys, and you know this, no matter how good you're playing or how bad you're playing, you never think about having the camera on you, even if it is, right? So every shot they hit, they know like, hey, I'm the only person in this tournament hitting a golf shot right now. Yeah. So that means everybody is just watching me. That's a unique pressure. You know, when you, and even for the guys that, you know, that contend, right? McNeely last week, he knew he was probably being showed every shot, but he was into the round and he was going, and, you know, he knew that the camera would pan away between shots, and, you know, so it's just a different type of knowing that you are, it's like being the quarterback, right? Or being the starting pitcher, or, you know, everybody knows that the camera is on you at that moment.
That's such an awesome point, and it makes me think of the fact that, like, usually if you're playing in a tournament on the PGA Tour and you're struggling, guess what? We're not going to see you anymore. They're just going to stop showing you. What a unique experience for Kevin Kistner the first two times that he played, especially that first time when every single shot he hit was just dreadful, and yet he knows every single one is being shown to everybody watching. Like, that had to be a really kind of isolating feeling for him.
Yeah, and I think that's what these guys are talking about the most, about how unique it is, right? That's the uniqueness that this brings. Man, I've got such a soft spot for Kisner, and just I don't know if you've heard the interview, but he's like, yeah, I'll go in the driving range, or I'll have the TrackMan during a practice round, and I'll stripe every driver, and then I get out there and play, and I heel slice it into the bunker and make a bogey. And that's literally what I went through. So yeah. I understand every single dynamic of that. And he's also just a good laid back dude. But yeah, he has the personality that he can handle the criticism, right? He's not really too worried about it. Yeah. I'll be interested to see. I think that Tiger, for me, it all comes down to health, right? And he can handle doing this because it's not hard on his body. He's literally just hitting range balls.
I don't want to get into the guessing game because I don't think we have an ability to guess all that accurately as to when Tiger will play again. But let me ask you this. If you were Tiger Woods, when would you play next, assuming that you were healthy enough?
Yeah, I think I just think it comes down to knowing his body, right? Like, so I wouldn't go into Augusta as my first event, right? I would try to play somewhere. I always found when I was playing, I usually peaked in my third week in a row, right? So anytime I would get to my third week, it just seemed like I was more into the groove of traveling and what's going on with your body and all that stuff. So I'd like to see him play a couple of times. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I would like to see him at least prove that he can walk 72 holes once before we get there, because Augusta's known as not being a very easy walk either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I personally, like, I know a lot of people want him to play the API, and I would love it if he played the API, but Bay Hill is a bomber's course. And for one thing, like, it's not just that doesn't fit Tiger's game as much anymore, but it's also like that's not Augusta, right? Augusta takes both elements of driving and diminishes them a little bit, and then really emphasizes iron play, around the green play, and putting. You get more of that at the Players' Championship, particularly the lack of driving distance mattering a whole lot. You get the approach signal. you get a ton of around the green signal. And like that's, to me, that might be the most important point, because it's also the part of Tiger's game that might be the least tested in tournament environments. Because I think like swinging in the TGL, pretty similar to what you're doing on an actual golf course. But you can't tell me that chipping off turf is the same as chipping off the tight lies at Sawgrass or especially at Augusta. I know that green is kind of juiced up and really, really difficult, but it's not the same as putting on Augusta's green. So I would say the Players' Championship would give him the best prep. And it's also just like you got to get some reps, as you said.
Yeah, I'm surprised. So I don't know if everybody knows this. So that's what I do now is I own an artificial turf business. And so we build putting greens for all kinds of different places and practice facilities. I'm surprised by their turf choice, right? There's a way to lay that grain to make it where it's a different shot every time.
Yeah.
So it has grain just like real grass does. They also have like a non-directional turf that would be really cool as fringes. It's literally pretty similar to the look of a real fringe. We use it all the time. So I think they could do stuff to make that side of the product a little bit better. They're just kind of saying, hey, this is what we're doing. And I think it's more of now that the putting green that they use with that system to move the slopes and change everything is really incredible. I would love to know like what the total technology, like if somebody called and said, hey, I want one of those in my house, what it would cost. Cause it's millions.
It's about time that we talk about Ludwig Åberg's dominance this past weekend. He was phenomenal. And then also like, just as you said, getting on a plane and playing really well in the triple header. How impressed were you? Because I thought the last 48 hours did as much to get Åberg into the conversation of like best 5 players in the world as anything he could have done.
So, I mean, anybody that's listened know we've talked about him as in that elite category for a long time. You know, some people want to see him win a major first. To me, the elite category are guys that can hit shots that nobody else in the field can hit, or at least, you know, outside of the top 10 or 12, maybe 15 guys. Now, that number does continue to go up, I think, of that can hit the unbelievable shots. But he's just as soon as he wins a major, we'll be talking about him week in and week out. I think obviously we know he's healthy now. I think that a lot of the reason that we didn't talk about him this week at all is because we didn't know if he was healthy. Was he, you know, how did he feel? I mean, like, I think that's why we literally, I don't think we hardly discussed him for the unknown reason. Would you agree that we probably would have at least mentioned him if we knew he was healthy?
Yeah, definitely. There's also an element of we almost need to put Åberg in the same category that we've put Victor Hovland in for a few years, which is when you get to a golf course that emphasizes around the green play, like Torrey Pines does, there are some players that you just have to ignore that for, because when they hit the ball really well, they hit it so well that they don't need their around the green play. Hovland has kind of been that way. We've seen Hovland really pop at like Bay Hill, for example, despite that fact. And now we're seeing the same with Åberg at times. He is the only guy, I think, capable of dominating an entire event off the tee the way that Rory does, where it's just a relentless 320 down the middle, 320 down the middle, 320 down the middle, just not making mistakes. He actually did make the one mistake, by the way, early, number 4, pulling it into the hazard, made 2 straight bogeys, but was just flawless after that. And sometimes, like, I mean, we saw a near flawless round from Maverick McNeely as well, but to do that and to maintain that level of play throughout the entire back 9 when you're chasing like that, I was just so incredibly impressed. And then going to TGL, and it's not that he played well in TGL, it's that, like, you could tell Rory McIlroy was impressed and intimidated by the way that Åberg was playing. There was one hole late. Rory hits one stiff to like 8 feet on a par 3. Åberg hits it to 4 feet. Like, it's just you don't see Rory intimidated by the ball striking of other players very often. We very clearly are seeing it right now with Åberg.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. He's incredible. And can hit, like I said, I think you hit it right. There's the fact that the way he can drive it, and we talk about driving it so much on this show that it's just such a huge advantage in the game. So when you're the best in the world at something or in the conversation, when you're playing good, you're going to be hard to beat. That's just the bottom line of what goes on there. And I honestly think that the way that whole tournament played out, it helped Oberg to be chasing and not being chased, right? So I think if Oberg would have got there earlier, McNeely would have probably made another birdie coming in the way he was hitting it, knowing that he wasn't in the lead, but yet he had to still go make another birdie to get to the lead.
Yeah, I think there's a very good chance that you're right about that. It was interesting. Like one thing I will say about Oberg in this final round is that it wasn't necessarily the driver. It was the iron play and the putting. And to me, like that was the next evolution for Oberg. It was the way that he had to get in the winner's circle. The driver is what makes him contend all the time. The driver is what gives us the ability to say, like, hey, this guy's going to be one of the best in the world. But it has to be those other parts of his game that come through to then get over the hump and actually win. And so we very, very much saw that. He was incredible with his iron play kind of all day long, and also made a ton of putts. And really, like, the only putt he made that was kind of a not lucky putt, but like a surprise make was the one on 15 for his third straight birdie. All the others were like 10, 12 feet, and they just kept pouring into the middle of the cup too. Like I was just incredibly impressed with basically his entire game. And like I said, he didn't really need the short game at all.
And I think those are the ones that if McNeely makes, he hit it, like 15 feet from 220 and missed, and then he hit it like 20 feet for eagle and missed. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones where the Oberg seemed to be making those instead of where McNeely missed those down the stretch. And once again, it's a circumstantial deal, right? I think if you're not 8 under through 12 on the day and all of a sudden find yourself in the lead, like I think that there's a better chance those go in.
That round from McNeely was on pace to be one of the best ever. It was actually really cool because even though it was at Torrey Pines, this was the Genesis Invitational. And I think one of the absolute best rounds of the last 5 years was Hideki's closing 61 at the Genesis last year at Riviera. And we nearly saw a comparable round from McNeely here. Getting to 9 under through 13 holes at Torrey Pines South is just absolutely absurd. I thought the turning point for the tournament and for his round was the wedge on 14. He had just hit a perfect drive, had a little wedge in, and I noticed it was the first swing that he had made in a while that wasn't a full swing. He tried to take a little bit off, took a little bit too much off, and I think it might have been one of those instances where he's so amped up that he was worried that he was going to try to take some off, and the adrenaline would mean that he still swung really hard and would make a mistake long, and he just took too much off, comes up short, makes a bogey, and wasn't able to make a birdie after that. I wonder, if he hits that stiff or just hits it to 20 feet and makes par, how much better are those last 4 holes for him?
Yeah, I was even talking about, I knew he had to birdie 18 coming in, and to not make birdie on 18 was to that pin. You just see it happen so much, and you just, you just got the feeling that he wasn't going to win if he didn't make birdie on 18. Which, those little wedge shots are so hard. I think he probably chunked it a little. If you asked him, nothing wasn't horrid bad, but it just was enough to
the one on 14.
Yeah.
I didn't think he chunked it. To me, it looked like his backswing was just really, really short, and there's no way he meant to go that quick. Could be wrong there, but that was my impression live, because it looked like contact was good. They even showed a replay of it. It looked like contact was decent. But it's just such an interesting thought that one of the best players in the world could be 9 under through 13, make one mistake with a swing, and all the momentum is gone. The rest of the round is derailed. He only had 4 holes left, and the fact that he made pars on 15, 16, 17, nothing wrong with that, but it just wasn't the same. He wasn't making the same quality of swings. He made, it was a bad drive on 17, for example. I just think it's yet another reminder, by the way, of just how difficult it is to close out golf tournaments and win, because you can be that perfect for 13 holes, one mistake, and now you feel all the pressure again. You feel the magnitude of the moment. You're reminded that you're not invincible, and all of a sudden it becomes really hard to close it out.
And what's funny is this applies to every average golfer out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guys that are, hey, I got a chance to shoot under par for the first time ever, and they finish double to, shoot 78 like they do about every other time they play. So it's hard. It's hard on all levels of golf to just the mindset of finishing. And, I think this is what Tiger, speaking of Tiger, did so well, is that almost like there was no situation that caused him, there was no situation too big to where he wasn't playing like he did every other hole, which just happened to be the best in the world.
Yeah. One thing I didn't even put on here, let me add this real quick. Scottie Scheffler had one of the strangest events that we've seen from him in quite some time. I don't actually have the data on this, so don't quote me on it, but I'm willing to bet a large amount of money that this is the first time, maybe in his entire career, but certainly over the last few years, that he had 2 rounds in an event where he gained at least 4 strokes on the field and lost strokes with his ball striking. In round 2, he lost strokes with his ball striking and gained 4.8. In round 4, he lost strokes with his ball striking and gained 4.1 strokes against the field. A combination of elite short game and like that part of his game we're used to. He's had an elite short game for quite some time, but he also made a lot of putts in rounds 2 and 4. I don't know what the hell happened in round 3, but 2-part question. Do you view this as kind of like, oh God, this is even scarier for the field, because if he's going to be this good on and around the greens now, we know the ball striking is going to come back? Or do you view it as, okay, he's showing signs of being human with his ball striking in a way that he hasn't in the last few years, so maybe he's actually more beatable now? What do you think?
I would be in the middle, right? That's probably a cop-out answer, but I'm probably in the middle of those two. I think that he is scary good. I mean, we're talking about the worst 3rd round score he's ever shot, and he still finishes 3rd. Like,
yeah.
I think the making of the putts probably is because he hit it so bad at times, and I think you can attest to this, that you've been there in your career at some point where you maybe didn't drive it like you usually do, and for some reason you just grinded it out and made a lot more putts than maybe you normally would, and it kind of ends up to the same means. So I think there's a little bit of that in golf anyway, and it's weird that it happens, but I've seen it so often that maybe it's just a little bit of that came into play here. Hey, I know I have to hole putts because I'm not hitting it very well. Not that he's not always focused, but a little bit extra focused, and knowing that that's his only way into contention. And it's hard, unless you've been in the situation, it's hard to describe really how it works mentally. So I think for him, I think it just shows when he does hit it really good why he is absolutely dominant. A lot of it's situational, right? We talk about this some too. We don't know what's going on in his personal life, how much he's got to practice. Are things different? Does his body not feel as good as it normally does? We don't know a lot of the things about life. We just know what we see.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably a little bit of everything. I think the fact that, we even have to talk about Scottie struggling and he finished 3rd is just crazy.
Yeah. There is one element of this that I do think is worth touching on. That is, hole out from around the green on number 5, hole out from the bunker on number 15, and if that bunker shot doesn't go in, it's 20 feet past the pin. If you take those 2 shots out, he does not gain strokes with his short game in round 4. In fact, he loses a little bit with his short game in round 4. So I think like that's worth mentioning, because then we're not even talking about him finishing 3rd. Now we're talking about him likely finishing T9, I would say, if those don't go in. So there is that, but man, he's having more spike putter rounds. Like last year, when his putter was quote unquote competent, he won, but he didn't have events where he won because of his putter. He had events where the putter did enough for him to win. Right now, we're seeing spikes from the putter that we just didn't see. Like his best one was he won the API gaining 1.2 strokes. But his other wins, he gained 0.4, 0.4, 0.5, 0.2, 0.5, 0.8, negative 0.3 at the Olympics. That's nuts to be winning with that kind of putting performance. So if he is making more putts this year, I do think ultimately it means that the ceiling is even higher, and there are going to be weeks where he's even harder to beat. But he's definitely not showing the same level of consistency with his ball striking this year as last year, because last year he didn't have any event, like literally not a single event where his ball striking was as beatable as it was this week.
And is it just the fact that maybe he's spending more time working on his putting and less time hitting balls? Like, that's a very real answer, right?
Yeah.
And you can see it by all the different grips, because I get it all the time. Well, why is he changing grips? I mean, when I get to start preparing for any events that I play this year, I will practice cross-handed a lot. Mm-hmm. I never even think about putting cross-hand on the golf course, but it helps my tempo. It helps my body get in a better position. It's so the changing of grips is not a big deal to me. It's the fact of, if he is doing that, that means he's working on it a lot. Mm-hmm. So and maybe that's part of it, right? Is that, hey, we're seeing this spike because he's worked on it all winter. He's changed grips. He's worked on different putters. He's figuring out what works best for him. And I think we kind of seen this with several different players, right? We saw it with Tom Kim comes to mind when he chased driving distance, and then everything else went away. Jordan Spieth had happened to, kind of the same idea. So I think that we're probably talking about a combination of everything. And then we'll see how, I mean, once that all melds together, I mean, he's going to be basically unbeatable.
Yeah. Last thing I want to touch on from this last week is the massive underdog week that we had, and hopefully we can continue this going forward. 12-2 on standard underdog picks. We did go 0-2 on boosted underdog picks. So like instead of just the 1.0x multiplier, trying for a 1.1x multiplier or something like that. It's funny. I think I only have 2 losses now on the season on the tourney finishing position bets. Both of them are both of them are as big of a loss as you can possibly take. I had worse than a top 20 for Rory McIlroy. He won. I had worse than a top 20 for Ludwig Oberg. He won. Outside of that, every single one of them is hit. So it's like, look, if I appreciate the fact that they both made it very obvious that pick was not going to hit, but 3 big 3-pick wins on the week. And like I said, 12-2 on those standard picks. The edge is really, really strong over on underdog. I'm not going to give away too much of the secret of what we're doing and what picks we're attacking. Underdog is already, I can say, like, they started a little bit to adjust to what we're trying to do, but there's still plenty of opportunity. So if you're interested, playing on underdog, use code FTN, but also sign up at FTN. Any DFS package will give you access to our Pick'em Discord, where I post every single play. Were you able to tail any of those, Justin?
Okay, I got into a couple. I think I went, and I just tailed all your stuff, and I think I only got in like 4, went 3-1 or something. I did notice when I went through myself is they've taken away a lot of the bogey bets. Mm-hmm. It's not like last year, and even the birdie bets are only with certain players. Remember, I mean, last year you had a drop down box where you could play. You probably had 30 more options than what you have this year on every single player. You're not seeing that much this year. I think that probably they realize that people are catching on to certain edges in the way they're doing things.
I think it just shows that, look, PGA is really difficult for underdog to price, right? Like, it's there. Number one, there's less information in sports books than they have in a sport like NBA, but also it's just, I think the biggest one is like these tail outcomes, especially. So if you're looking at a top 10 or a top 20, these finishing position, most picks on underdog are a tail outcome or are a median outcome. And when they're trying to price these tail outcomes, it just becomes that much harder. There's so much more uncertainty. There's just a higher degree. There's a higher probability that they make a mistake. And so that's when we go and we take advantage. So I think that's part of it, but it's also just like there's so much scoring uncertainty week in and week out that it's difficult for them. So what we have to do essentially is we have to make sure that we are not that we are not, getting this like really penalized payout because we're correlating too much. But as long as we are aware of that and paying mind to the payout, there's a really good chance that we're going to be successful long term. By the way, like we're up to 75% now on the entire season for these underdog picks. I don't think we're going to stay at 75%. That's a pretty ridiculous number, but I do think 65% is a very viable long-term win probability on these picks.
Yeah, and really, like, I think a lot of it too, like the things that at FTN that's different than anywhere else is that everybody understands exactly what you just said, right? 75% might not be doable. Although if it happened, I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. It would just be, it's just the realistic factor that, hey, like we're going to try to have a very big edge on what we're doing and try to be successful for the year, which like you said, I don't think at this point, unless they figure out some way to protect it a little bit more, I don't see how it happens. And I think it also shows how much more of an edge you have on golf than you do some of the other big sports.
Well, I mean, just for context, like if you're hitting at 55%, you're going to be profitable in the 3-pick plays on underdog. If you're hitting 65%, we're talking about a rate of return well over 50%. So like for every $100 that you put in, you're going to make 50 in the long run. That's a ridiculous return. Like, you're not going to be able to find that on sports books, for example, just betting props, betting matchups. You're not going to get anything close to that. So the opportunity, the upside on underdog, it really is significantly higher than you can get almost anywhere else in the sports betting industry.
Yeah. And the product's cool too. Like they've started doing it for like the dirt track stuff and, the other stuff that I'm involved with. So I like it. I like what they're doing. And just keep taking advantage of the edge while we have it.
All right. Mexico Open, course fit. The field is not strong this week. Let's not pretend that it is, but this is a week where we had a ton of success last year. Big giant takedowns all across FTN. That was the week that Jake Knapp won. We really kind of surged on the weekend. We're going to talk a little bit about last year's takedown, but first I just want to mention the course fit, and then we'll get into how we applied that course fit last year. This is one of the strongest weights on driving distance that we see all season. 133% more predictive than usual is driving distance. That is a huge number. The second kind of most extreme part of this course fit model is that around the green play matters 75% less than usual. So guys who bomb it and don't have touch around the greens, they're going to project significantly better here than anywhere else. Positive weight on putting, positive weight on approach play, pretty neutral on driving accuracy. First question for you, Justin. How does that course fit model just kind of fit with your expectations for this course?
Yeah, I mean, it's bomber's paradise. It's a resort course. Anybody that's played a resort course knows exactly how it is. It's interesting because I've seen a lot of chatter about, I think, 175 or, approach play from 150, 175. The problem is, yeah, that's really important if you don't hit it as far as these other guys. But guess what? The guys that I want to play, they're not going to have 150 or 175 unless it's into a par 5. So I just don't, I'm not going to buy into that side of it. But yeah, just, the guys that just bomb it. I mean, I think, is Cameron Champ even in the field? But like, that's the guy that even, I would be surprised if he's not, but I bet he's not. But those are the type of guys that just.
Can't tell. No, I don't think he is.
I don't think he is either. But I mean, that's the type of player that you think of when.
I mean, we've got plenty of guys who bomb the ball. Let's see the longest guys in the field. We have Ryan Fox gaining 0.35 strokes per round with his distance. Chris Gotterup at 0.4. Alejandro Tosti 0.47. Trevor Cohn 0.41. The rest of the game looked pretty atrocious.
I played with Trevor in Canada, and like I never thought of him as hitting it far. Like
he's a small sample guy, so let's check. What has Trevor?
I would think that like Trey Mullinax has to be in that conversation.
Oh no, Trevor Cone has been gaining a ton distance wise on the Corn Ferry Tour. We don't have as much data on him, so like that's less reliable of an estimate because a lot of that is just coming from the estimates on the Corn Ferry Tour. But yeah, it's let's see.
Trey Mullinax comes to mind. Will Gordon.
Yeah, where's Mullinax here? Hayden Springer up there pretty good. Luke List up there pretty good. Mullinax is at 0.2. Potgeider, whoever you pronounce his name, 0.25, and Royan 0.25. I think two of the more interesting names for me, Michael Thorbjornsson, we have him estimated at 0.3 per round, but he might be even longer than that. Another guy, kind of some limited data. But man, the ceiling we have seen from him, plenty good to win this golf tournament. I do think it's a good course fit. We've also seen some really, really bad play from him. So he's someone that I toyed with as an outright bet. We only have him at 1.5% to win, so not quite showing value. But
I also like this is a week too. Like, yes, on driving distance can be huge, but who are the guys, in my opinion, that are more talented than maybe the results have been? And I've been big on this, and pretty much all of the smaller events. The two guys that I think could break through this week that I'd love to see win, Alex Smalley and Taylor Moore. They both hit it plenty far enough. They both can putt well enough, and they're both. To me, they're more talented than maybe their results have showed.
Yeah, I really like this call. And it also, I think it's a perfect kind of transition into talking about the takedown last year. Apologies, by the way. I know this is really small on the screen. I wish there was a way for me to blow this up, but I can't. So I'm just going to kind of talk through what's on the screen here. The winning lineup from last year. By the way, this is from our single entry takedown lineup review video. Just go on to YouTube, search single entry takedown lineup review by Alex Blickle. It will show up. So you can see exactly this. But Keith Mitchell, long off the tee, not a great putter. Davis Thompson, not super long off the tee, kind of good everywhere else. Doug Gim, short off the tee, good everywhere else. Jake Knapp, long off the tee. At the time, he was a good putter. We didn't know a ton about Knapp at this time. He was kind of a buy low. He was very similar to, I think, where I'm viewing like Nicholas Norgard this week and Michael Thorbjornsson, players of that ilk, if you will. Robert McIntyre drove the ball pretty well, but wasn't super long. Good ball striker. He was coming off like some of the most disastrous putting early on in the season that you could possibly imagine. And then Garrett Kigo, long off the tee, good putter, extremely inconsistent everywhere else. So you can see from this takedown lineup a very, very diverse group of golfers, which gets to your point. Like, yeah, we have this pretty unique and extreme course fit model, but there's also something to be said in these fields of just take the guys who are better golfers than their price suggests and their ownership suggests, and just let them kind of rise to the top, if you will. So I think it's a really, really good point to make, that you don't have to just go searching for the guys who are long off the tee and putt well and aren't good with their short games. Just follow the GPP scores.
And I think that's where Davis Thompson came into that we talked about a lot last year, that at this time was like, he's just more talented than where he's priced in this field. Yes, it may not be like a perfect fit for him, but if you're better than everybody else, then it doesn't matter.
And your point about Smalley is awesome too, by the way, because we've got him projected at 1.16 expected strokes gained. Like, highest in the field is 1.48, so he's up there. He has one of the most well-rounded games in this field. We have him projected to gain over 1/10 of a stroke in all 5 categories: distance, accuracy, approach play, short game, and putting. He's just a solid player, and one of the reasons why we haven't seen him break through with a win is that he's one of the lower standard deviation players, where his event standard deviation is just pretty low. And that makes it hard for him to have the kind of ceiling that is going to beat fields full of players who are better than he is. But it also means that he's maybe more likely to win in an event where the rest of the field isn't better than he is. He's actually one of the best players in the field. So I really love this Smalley call. I think a lot of that also applies to Taylor Moore.
Yeah, and I just think that there's a few guys like that. I think, the younger guys, you mentioned Norgard already. I think that he's going to compete here because I think that, once again, I think he's just better than some of the other guys. More talented.
By the way, with Norgard, I mentioned the fact that we don't need to go searching for guys who are perfect fits for a golf course. But if you go to Norgard's data golf page, you will see a stream of green in the off the tee department, a lot of which is coming from distance. You will see a stream of green in the putting department, and you'll see a stream of red in the around the green department. So I don't think there's a better course fit in terms of someone who's going to project better here than he would on the average PGA Tour course than Norgard.
Yeah, and once again, here we are I think he's better, just more talented, period. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think this is a fun week because I think you can kind of take both and take. Hey, I'm going to take the guys that are the most talented, and then I'm going to add it with the guys that hit it the furthest and see what I can build from there.
Yeah. I think CT Pan is one of the more interesting names as well because he is profiling almost exactly the way Doug Gim was last season. Yes, we're at a course where bombers are really going to rejoice and they look fantastic. But like Doug Gim, Pan loses strokes with his distance. Like Doug Gim, he gains a lot with his accuracy off the tee. And then like Doug Gim, his irons and his around the green play really strong right now, which is basically the exact form we saw Gim come in with last season. Everybody knows this is a bombers course, so we don't have ownership up yet, but I wanted to kind of call this out for CT Pan because I think there's a good chance that, like Doug Gim last year, he goes under-owned because people recognize the talent, but they also recognize the kind of lack of fit. But the rest of his game is plenty good, right? We said there's an added emphasis on approach play. So the fact that he's a great iron player can really make up for some of that lack of distance advantage. So any other names that you really want to single out here?
I'm just curious of what you think Batia's ownership will be, being the highest priced player and just obviously, we've always considered him a pretty talented player as well. Do you think that he's just going to have Scotty Scheffler type of ownership, or is people are going to say, no, he's not really that good. I don't need to go all the way up there.
This is a good question. I think the best way I can answer this is by saying I don't know yet what the field is going to want to do with Bhatia and Kitayama. I have a feeling they prefer Bhatia, but they're very close in our expected strokes gained projections. We have Kitayama slightly ahead, but they are 1 and 2. The big thing, I think the crucial thing for people to understand about these guys, Bhatia has one of, if not the single highest projected standard deviations for us. Kitayama has one of the lowest, at least among the elite players in the field. What that means is we have Bhatia nearly 7% to win, Kitayama around 5%. We have Bhatia with a 15% chance of a miscut, Kitayama only a 10% chance. And that kind of distributes through. Bhatia is the ceiling play, Kitayama is the floor play. I think that's the way I want to look at it, potentially even more than what their ownerships are. Now, on this, that being said, if Bhatia is 40% and Kitayama is 20%, I'm going to prefer Kitayama. The inverse is true. I'm going to prefer Bhatia. So, yes, I do want ownership to drive this decision to some degree, but I also think it's important that everyone understand we don't know what we're getting from Bhatia the way we kind of know what we're getting from Kitayama. And I think that's always something that I focus on. It's nice to have a mixture of those high probability, low volatility plays and the contrarian upside, high volatility plays that can go and win you GPPs.
Yeah, I mean, is there an end game that you just skip that top altogether and go down to start with a guy like Stevens or Yager or somebody in that area?
Yeah, there is, because there's not a ton of value that I like off the top of my head. Victor Perez is one of our best projected values. But he's one of those guys, I don't know how much is his schedule influencing his projections. Because when you go look at the rounds that he's played, He has 4 of his last 10 events on the PGA Tour, which means 4 of his last 10 events with ShotLink. So we're building the projections from not a totally relevant sample, and he just has not played well on the TP World Tour at all. Was really not good in Phoenix either. Like mixed results at the Farmers. He played well at Torrey, but was not, or on the South course, but was not good at the North course. T34 at the Amex, like that's probably the course that fit him best so far this year. And this one is a not great fit, but all of that being said, this like upper 8, low $9,000 range is loaded with guys projected over a strokes gained per round. Smalley, Kevin Yu, Taylor Moore, Michael Kim, Harry Hall, Bo Hostler, and Ben Griffin aren't that far behind. You can go up a little bit to Rye, Rogers, Jaeger, Stevens is over a stroke. Then you go down a little bit to CT Pan, Højgaard, Norgard, Fox, Meisner, and Fishburne. So like you get a lot of names in that area that maybe you just play 6 guys or 5 guys from that group and you don't pay up because to your point, like the separation between Batia and Kitayama and the next, let's say 10 best guys, it's not the kind of separation that we see from Scotty and Rory versus everybody else or Scotty and Schauffele versus everybody else. So in that regard, maybe balanced is a little bit better.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I think that's kind of where I stand as well. When I saw it, I was like, man, I don't know. That being said, I think if I were going to lean up top, it'd be Batia just because, kind of to the point of we want somebody that's going to spike. And if we can get him on a spike week at a reasonable ownership, if everybody is skipping over him, then I might be interested.
I'm having a really difficult time with outrights this week because where I'm seeing the most value is actually on guys at the top. Like Kitayama, I think, has the highest perceived value in our projections, but he's 22-1. So it's hard to feel really, really strongly about a 22-1 bet. There's a chance that is the only outright that I make this week. I don't think I will go Kitayama with some other guys, but there are some others like in the 50, 60 range that I'm toying with. So what are your thoughts here? Do you have any strong feelings towards an outright this week?
I mean, I think Smalley will probably be the only one that I play just because I haven't even looked at Taylor Moore's price. I don't know what it is. But I think Smalley's going to be intriguing to me just because, like I said, I think he's proven he can contend in big events, and then you get a field where he thinks he should win, and the mental side of that, I think, just is really going to help him.
He's 33-1. We have him at 2.6% to win, so I'm not quite seeing, I'm not seeing a ton of value there, but I do agree. I think personally, I'm viewing Smalley as a better DFS play than an outright bet. This is kind of like the shape, if you will, of the odds board. To me, it's like the guys who should be 15 or 20 or 20 to 30, which isn't necessarily enough value for me to want to bet them. But in response, the guys who maybe should be, or at least that I expected to be, 60, 70, 80 are 40 to 50. And so I don't want to bet that range. Don't necessarily want to bet the top. And I'm left with a lot of guys that, they might be decent bets, but they don't meet the standard that I usually use to fire on outrights, which is a little bit higher. I might have to kind of just like lean into the uncertainty of some players like a Thor Bjornsson or a Norgard and say, I don't necessarily love the number, but there's a chance that these guys are a lot better than, what we are currently seeing or what we can possibly project, in which case they can be values in that way. Like Thor Bjornsson, 60-1. We have him at 1.5%. So that's not value unless you think he's actually better than this and maybe, has a 2 to 3% chance to win, and then you could actually find some.
Yeah, if I was gonna try to find somebody, it would be a Molinax or a Gotterup or a guy that we think maybe if he just has a huge spike week that hits it really far, that we can get some value. But once again, I don't think it'll come down to a numbers actual value, right? It's more of a feel.
There is one guy that I'm seeing very distinct value on, and that is Ryan Fox, 66-1. We have him at 2.4% to win. Let's see, how has he been playing lately? Because he might be another guy who, his projections are a little bit skewed by how often he plays on the DP World Tour. But he's been good on the DP World Tour of late. Had a very solid fall, which, by the way, is part of the reason why he's projecting quite well for us. He putted quite well in the fall. We know how long he is off the tee. So he's projecting as like a very good course fit here, where you get the driver with a bit of an improved putter. Putted very well last year, by the way, had 4 different events where he gained over a full stroke per round with the putter. Myrtle Beach, RBC Canada, US Open, and then the Open Championship. Is that the first time in his career that he spiked with the putter that often? Because I don't remember him doing that very often. So 3 times in 2023, 4 times in 2022. So yeah, just a little bit better putter than I kind of have always considered Ryan Fox. So there's value there, I think, if we trust the projections. Did finish 10th in his he had 2 starts on the DP World Tour in between his last 5 PGA events. Was 10th once, 27th once. So I think we can trust this projection and trust the value on Ryan Fox.
Yeah, and he's another one that I think is talented, and he showed it at times where that he can play in big spots. So yeah, I don't think that's outlandish. I didn't realize he was 66 either. That does seem a bit high. It just comes down to I still think that we have to figure out in these tournaments who can win and who can't, because I think that's a big deal especially in the outright market. Like, there's some guys that are they can contend a lot, but they have trouble closing. Where do some of these guys fall into that Smalley, Fox? There's just a ton of them, right? We don't really know with fields like this.
And by the way, that 66 is available on Bet365, where you can get the each way. It's showing only on the prop shop as available on BetMGM. It seems like there's some issue with the prop shop not showing all of the different sites. So might have to do some manual searching for the best number, but 66 is available at Bet365 for Ryan Fox. So that's going to be a pick for me. We already talked a lot about DFS, but do you have any other kind of lingering thoughts on some potential DFS plays? In the takedown lineup last year, I had a $7,000 Robert McIntyre, and I think it was a $6,600 Garrett Higo. Any guys in that range that stand out to you as just better players than their price?
So my first click was Goddard up at 7,200. I thought that was way too cheap for his ability here. I don't know what that'll look like ownership wise. As far as going down even further, would you be surprised with a guy like David Skins if he found his way into contention again, that, for some reason always has a couple weeks a year on low scoring golf courses to find his way? I guarantee you he's way down there. The other one that I don't know what he's at, but would be Hayden Springer if he's super cheap.
Let's see, where is Springer? I remember seeing him earlier. I don't think he was that cheap.
6,800. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cheaper than I thought he would be. Yeah, I think that's a solid call. I do think it's a really important point to make that, when you have a field of this strength, the $7,000 range is not going to be filled with high probability bets, right? That no matter who you're going to in this range, you're taking on a lot of risk, and it's just a matter of who's worth that risk. I think Matty Schmid is the guy who stands out the most to me. Solid off the tee, really good putter, bad short game, so it's a fantastic course fit here. I think he's probably going to be my guy. He very much reminds me of the Higo bet, the Higo play last year. What do you think of Matt?
They're similar players for sure. Yeah. They're both similar players. And I think that Matty actually has the ability to hit it further maybe than projections show, because he doesn't hit a ton of drivers when he doesn't have to.
Yeah. If you look at the fall, you saw 3 really solid finishes. 16th at the Sanderson Farms, 5th at the Black Desert Championship, 3rd at the Shriners. And then he just played horribly in November, December, and January. Lost over a full stroke per round in all 5 of the events that he played, 1 on the DP World Tour, 4 on the PGA Tour. Then played well again at the Farmers Insurance Open, which might be the closest to this event in terms of course fit. Difference being that short games matter a lot at the Farmers. They don't matter here, but you get the big distance signal. You get a positive putting signal. And then it was awful. Just dreadful in all 4 categories at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. So he is like the ultimate wild card. There's no doubt that he deserves to be as cheap as he is, but I don't see anyone in this range contending as often as Matty Schmid would if you were able to play this event like 30 times.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think is another one of those guys that's huge upside.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I also think Matty Schmid probably a good bet as well. So Schmid and Ryan Fox, I think, are going to be my 2 outrights.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm just going to wait and see what happens, and I know for sure I'll have some Smalley outright of some sort, and then, man, there's just so many guys that if they peak or if they spike, they can win here. So I might get involved in the live market after seeing what happens, especially round 1 and 2.
Yeah, I like that. All right, 1 and done. This is not a very fun week to talk 1 and done. It also has not been a very fun start for us. So, like, on the one hand, how well you do in these events don't mean a ton, but it'd be nice to get some positive momentum going. So what are your thoughts here on 1 and done?
I really don't have any thoughts because obviously I don't think is there anybody in this field that we would want to use somewhere else.
No.
So like we can basically pick whoever we want. So at that point, do you take a favorite, or is he going to be super high owned? Does that even matter?
Like, both Batia and Kitayama, I think, are going to be probably like, I would guess Batia is 25%, Kitayama is at least 15, something like that, which doesn't exclude them for me, but are they that much more likely to win than a Taylor Moore or an Alex Smalley, where we might have some really low ownership on those guys and they could do just as well? I don't know. It's a tough week, 1 and done wise. What are your thoughts there?
What's your opinion on Knapp this week?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, he obviously can win here. He's shown form as of late, kind of what we're used to seeing. He's back to hitting more drivers. Obviously, once again, is everybody going to go back there? And then does everybody go there and then, leave us more room, less ownership on a Batia?
Yeah, this is a really good question. What do we do with Knapp this week? One thing I will say, the distance that we're seeing from him this year, not the same as what we saw last year. So coming into this event last year, let me go get this data. He was gaining like 13 yards per round on the field. He gained 19 at the actual Mexico Open, gained 22.5 yards per round the week after at PGA National. This year, he's gained, starting at the Century, 0.1, 8.7, 8.2, 11.8, 7.0, and 3.7 yards. I think the first question we have to answer with Knapp is that course dependent, and will he unleash a little bit more here in Mexico? I do not know the answer to that question. I'm pretty torn on what to do with Knapp. Yeah,
it's just another guy that, like, I think it would be Smalley, Knapp, and then Batia, if he's low owned, would be the 3 that I would lean into.
I think, by the way, we will get a much better indication of what Knapp's 1 and done popularity is going to be once we have DFS ownership, because at $8,600, like right below Alex Smalley, by the way, in price, if Knapp is higher owned than Smalley pretty easily. If both are getting ownership or neither are getting ownership, then it becomes a bit of a more difficult decision. And certainly in one and done, if Knapp is going to be low owned, I think he's a really solid pick since we know he can win here. We know, at least theoretically, like what a great course fit he can be here when he's unleashing that driver. So
and he proved that he can win.
Process.
It proved he can win, right? So that's the other thing here is like we get a guy that we know has the ability to win.
I also think that Norgard is a solid play here because we don't know how good he is. There's a chance that he's already really, really good and one of the best players in this field. We definitely know that he's one of the best course fits here. So I think he will be low enough owned that he's definitely a solid play. So I think my inclination here, Justin, is that we have enough very good options that we don't need to go to Batia or Kitayama.
Yeah, I agree. What's Norgard's price on DraftKings anyway?
8,400.
Okay.
For the record, I built his like strokes gain profile manually, just because we don't have enough data on him, and it's not that he's projecting poorly, but he's not projecting as well as like CT Pan, Olesen, Højgaard, Ryan Fox, Meisner, or up ahead of him, Smalley, you, Griffin, Taylor Moore, that group. I don't know what kind of ownership he's going to get, but I think if he's low owned, I'm going to like him more than his projections suggest and more than his GPP score suggests. So if the GPP score is already positive, I'll be very in on him.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And once again, we talk a lot about ahead of the curve. Are we ahead of the curve here before he gets more popular?
Yeah. All right, guys, that will do it. Very fun Pro V Pro. Let's have some fun watching Tiger Woods later today, and hopefully we see him back on the course. One final reminder, we will have underdog picks kind of throughout the week, but I'm especially interested in getting some probably later today. So make sure you are in the Pick'em channel of the FTN Fantasy Discord. We'll catch you next time.